Welcome everyone to the first LensAutos Podcast sit-down chat sort of series that we're going to start, and hopefully you'll see more of. We're here with a little bit of lens trivia, the first person I ever did an actual chat with, so it's very nice to have you back again, Mr Chris Tolman.
Thank you very much, Louis.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you back, and obviously it means I have a little bit more knowledge in my bank for us to talk about. And obviously you are the namesake of the Tolman company, Tolman Engineering, that have been going along for a long time, but at the moment you've got a bit of notoriety with the 205. A lot of interest has been generated, which is great. But I think I'm hoping I'm speaking for a few people where they'd probably like to know what credentials maybe you have to create such a lovely set of cars, you know, like what experience you have to offer into these cars, you know.
Oh, thank you. Well, I suppose we really need to go back to the beginning of what all started it. And the reality is my dad was a mechanic. So I grew up surrounded by cars and motorbikes and those sorts of things. And he actually worked at a Peugeot Talbot dealer. So I remember the launch of the 205, the new cars coming into the showroom, the T16 being there. And fortunately, he ended up working for other people that were very prolific within the motorsport world. So I very quickly got interested in rallying. That was my passion, probably still is. It's, you know, what I've done. And from, 7 years old, all I wanted to do was work on a rally car and travel the world. And through bitter determination, diligence, meeting the right people, a lot of luck, I ended up working for the Mitsubishi World Rally Team, which was kind of the joy and the goal. I did work for ProDrive before that, on the race team when we were doing the Mondeo Super Touring cars. But the goal was always to do rally cars and travel the world. And I was so lucky to be involved with Mitsubishi, with Rally Art Europe, with Tommy Mackin and Freddie Loix, and then going on to work with Gilles Panizzi, Francois Delacour, all great
names, right?
Legendary people, go to all of these places all around the world, in a time when rallying was still almost true to rallying, and we, the first couple of years we did travel from service to service rather than having the central service points. So I feel very lucky to have experienced that. Met some of the most genuine, the most clever, the most entertaining people that we were lucky to meet, that have now gone off and permeated to all facets of motorsport. There's almost not a team at the top level that hasn't got somebody from Rally Art in it. And I mean that genuinely. You look at Vittel's #1 mechanic. He's an ex-Rally Art guy. He's been there. The guy that runs the Peugeot Le Mans program was at Rally Art. It's just everywhere.
Best of breed have sort of come out from where you guys were. There's probably like a sort of a generation there, sort of class of, that have clearly found their way into current motorsport still.
Well, a very good friend of mine sort of coined it, really. I mean, I come from a very humble background. I never had the privilege of going to an expensive school or anything like that, and this was kind of our old boys network, really. So yeah, that's
well, look,
awesome.
I mean, as you say, what I'd like to do, as we've given people now a sort of a quick introduction of where you've come from, I'd like to sort of take it kind of back, and I just would like to know sort of what was your first moment that gave you enthusiasm for cars?
Probably Dukes of Hazzard.
Okay. Yeah.
That's one of the iconic things. I remember that on a Saturday afternoon of this loud engine sideways on dirt. And quite sad that came before the Daisy Duke part of it. It was always about the car. And that's one of the first things. Obviously, Matchbox toys. But I think I was 9 years old when my dad first took me to see a rally, and that just blew me away.
Impressionable.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then from that moment on, it was, you want to be working in a car, lying in a river, covered in mud, and that was it. But Dukes of Hazzard, Matchbox cars. That was really the thing that.
And I'm sure you probably would have seen a lot of rallying and motorsport on TV. You would have engaged your eyes, and you would have seen things, as you say, I want to be that guy that I'm seeing on the side of a dusty trail, trying to change wheels and stuff. But from my knowledge, you actually sort of initially started in aerospace. Is that quite right?
So officially, that's what my first real job was. I did an apprenticeship in aircraft engineering. Like I said, my father worked for some guys that were involved within factory rally teams and motorsport professionals. Another guy who was a mentor to me, who I did work experience with, everybody said, go and do this apprenticeship. It will be the best training you can get. Don't go playing around with cars. You'll never do anything with cars. But so I took all of their advice and I did this apprenticeship, which was absolutely the best thing to do. Yeah. So it was all of the engineering principles. It was all to the highest level, being aircraft and military aircraft and aircraft test and evaluation. But the draw of the motor car was too much. And you know, after qualifying for my apprenticeship, becoming an industrial technician and finalising on Empire Test Pilot School, doing design work and things within the drawing office and all that, the cars were too much. So in 1999, yes, I'm that old.
Is that 25, 26 years? About that? I think so. Is that making you feel a bit old? Well, I'm born in 2001, so that can sort of...
yeah, exactly. So ProDrive were advertising for people for the Mondeo Super Touring Car project, and I was lucky enough to get a job there and get thrown in at the deep end. So that was the start of the professional motorsport.
Amazing, yeah. Because obviously you started at ProDrive and you were engine building, was that right?
Yeah, so I started off as a trainee engine builder, and we were doing the engines for the 2000 season of BTCC, which was kind of the last year of the Super Touring. So it was right at the end, and it was, you know, pretty much an arms race to get the best things, and they were very, very unique and special cars.
And in terms of your younger days, was it in the younger days that you did a bit of hill climbing, or was that a bit later on?
No, so when I was once I'd started driving, I built my first car, which was a Talbot Sunbeam, because it was all part of the thing, a works replica rally car, but only with a 1300 engine. I desperately wanted to do competition with it because that's what I wanted. A friend of mine, mum, actually very generously sponsored me and paid my entry fees for the year to do some sprinting. Amazing. Which is what I did, which was the first competitive thing I did. I then ended up building him a race car, which started him and his racing career, and he ended up in touring cars.
Wow, okay.
So yeah, that was, very, very grateful, and we'll never forget these people that helped at the beginning.
I think it's definitely, it's so important, even my little sort of foray into the space, the people that have helped me, like even like yourself, like just offering a conversation, you don't quickly forget the people who just give you a bit of time, even when you maybe haven't earned the time in a way, So
everybody's got to start, and my biggest achievements, without doubt, within what we've done at Tolman is all about people, because without people and good people, you've got nothing. Yeah. So to grow these people is the best thing. I quickly realised when I did my tiny bit of hill climbing that whilst I enjoy driving, and I think I'm all right, but I'm by no means as good as the car. And, with my years at Rally Art and running the business here with all the racing that we've done, I've been so lucky to sit next to some of the best drivers in the world and literally world champions. And it soon humbles you to know that whatever you do, you're not doing your car justice. So I get far more of a kick out of building them than I do out of driving them.
Well, it feels quite non-egotistical that you're willing to recognise that there's better drivers, and maybe you're better at actually creating the vehicle for them, or adapting and bettering the vehicle for them to razz it about.
Well, from an engineering point of view, what's the point in building the best, lightest car and then go and put me in it? It just doesn't make any sense. Right. It's like chopping a couple of cylinders off, isn't it?
So, sure. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, as you say, let's talk about the Rally Art days. So what was the role within Rally Art? When did that start?
So I started there at the end of 2000, and I was in the sub-assembly department. So duties there were building uprights, steering racks, handbrake assemblies, drive shafts. It was all of the components, again, sub-assemblies that go on, which was hugely interesting. And then doing on-event support. So you ended up on a corner of the car. Yeah. And then as the time progressed within the company, I then went into the test team and was a mechanic on the test team doing the test cars. And then when the company changed dramatically in 2003, for the first time, we started doing the engines in-house in Rugby rather than coming from Japan. Right. And I went in there to help do that and build engine. Well, we did a lot of the prep work. We did all of our test engines in-house. For political reasons, the entry engines were assembled elsewhere. Right. But yeah, that was a great experience.
Yeah. So in terms of within the Rally Art timeline, did you ever go out into the rally stages with Rally Art, or were you in-house for most of that time?
No, it was pretty much 50-50.
Okay, cool.
You know, the way that the program worked, we were the smallest team in the WRC, but we had effectively 3 teams. You had what we used to call European team, long haul team, and test team. So typically, your first event was Monte Carlo Rally. So the Sweden Rally is directly after. So the cars that are prepped for Sweden are very different from a Monte car, but also the time schedule. So the Sweden cars would be prepped and done, and then everybody would leapfrog. So some years you'd be on European, some years you'd be on long haul. Depending on who you were in the department, you know, you'd share events, and it was a very fair thing. You know, if somebody got to do Australia one year, you get to do it the next year. Yeah. Some events were legendary. You know, I was so lucky to do, you know, one of the last safari rallies that they did. I know they've brought it back now, but this was going back to 2001. So yeah, been to all the most noticeable places, and seen all the things that go with it.
Well, did you find what were the differences between the let's say the more like Scandi ice race style vehicles and then, I don't know, sort of more desert maybe? What were the key things that had to be altered and changed for the depending terrain?
It depends entirely. So Monte Carlo is very unique. So Monte Carlo is predominantly a tarmac rally, but because of the time of year and the topography and where you're going, you can get snow and ice. So the car is 90% tarmac, but then we used to do some very clever modifications where it could be converted to ice tyres. So your tarmac tyre is typically an 18-inch diameter tyre with a slick, semi-slick. If you need to go to ice, as in Sweden, that would be a very narrow wheel, usually around a 16-inch with studs in. But for Monte Carlo, we could run those if it was really bad snow on the tops of the cols. A lot of the time it was only limited, so you could run slicks with studs in. But then if we did have to run the smaller wheel, we had a full tarmac upright, but with a special adapter, so you could put a smaller disc with the big caliper on. Yeah. So you could literally do these crazy things and bolt a wheel on quickly.
Yeah. During the stage, I presume you can.
No, during service.
Okay, so there wasn't any like quick adaptability in that sense.
No. If you're going back to the days of like recce, lots of services before and after every stage, huge service vans. That was all long before my time. Those days were very wild. Yeah. This was, you know, you had usually a central service or limited service areas per day and a number of services throughout the day, usually, you know, a 10-minute in the morning, a couple of 30 minutes, and at the end of the day, a 45. Right. A Sweden car, which was ice snow, is much more like a gravel car, but with some subtle differences. So obviously the terminal speeds are relatively slow, and it's very, very cold, so you've run a lot more blanking on the radiators. You have to do some special adaptations so that you don't fill compact ice and snow in things. Gravel cars are what they say. You know, they're generally a lot stronger and a lot more different uprights, those sorts of things. Tarmac, as it says. The big difference used to be the safari car. So a safari car was just beefed up. You know, if you've ever stood next to a genuine safari car, they're like a Land Rover.
I was going to say, do they go up?
Huge amount of ground clearance. Just as an example, if most of your suspension bolts were a 10mm thread, when you're building a safari car, they'd be 12mm.
Right, okay, yeah.
One of the things that Mitsubishi did, which changed the way that we looked after cars, was when Tommy started driving on the Safari Rally, he wouldn't slow down. So normally on these huge endurance events, you don't drive at 10 tenths. You just take it easy and you look after the car. Tommy was like, no, I'm driving it flat out. So what they did was they went, okay, well, we'll just change the car every time it comes into service. So there were no restrictions then on the number of people. So we literally used to change all the corners, all the cross members, all the gearbox, transmission every time.
Because it got that battered, I assume.
Well, no, it was preventative. So before it got battered.
Sure.
So rather than making it so strong and so heavy that it wouldn't break, you just change it far more often.
Just keep swapping them out.
And I think a lot of the teams were quite upset about this because it just added huge costs because, you know, rather than taking, normally you'd have 2.5 sets of suspension per car, per event, plus what's on the car. And then if one car got taken out, you'd mix and match. But with Safari, you'd probably have 10 sets per car.
Gosh.
It was hugely expensive.
Cost-wise, that all of a sudden it goes crazy.
So the Safari Rally was a very, very different event in that instance.
Well, are we in the timeline? I don't know if we can even put this in the video, but is we in the timeline where you said apparently about someone holding you to gunpoint, or is that are we in that realm of time?
Yeah. So you know, we were very lucky. It didn't happen a lot in my time, but 2001 in Argentina, there was the economic climate in Argentina was very low. The wages were bad, and you know, we went there for the rally. Mitsubishi, along with the other teams, were all in a restaurant one night, and 3 gunmen came in and held everybody to ransom. You know, it's one of the things you've got to realise. You know, these countries, they're not all safe like England is.
No, and I'm assuming a few wallets were lost in that scenario.
There was a few wallets and a few watches and a few battered egos.
Gosh.
Fortunately, nobody was hurt.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does happen.
You say it's not the Wild West anymore, but it sounds like it had its moments.
It did, yeah. You know, and you're in some, you know, Africa again. The value of life is a lot less than we have, you know, and that's, you know, coming from a very privileged Western society. And I came from a tiny little village in Dorset, so it's, you know, completely cosseted. And you're there where the value of life is very small. You know, I remember the first time in Kenya witnessing a road accident where the guy's head got cut off and flew out. And one of the things that the team manager used to say us in the briefings is like, you know, if you have an accident, don't stop. You know, just keep going. Don't put yourself in it. I wasn't involved in the accident, but it happened. I was like, yeah, no, I've got to keep going. And then everybody else was stopping. Oh, good, they're all going to help. They're not going to help the person. They're robbing all the parts off the truck, and you know, because the value of life is so small, and it's just crazy.
Well, I can imagine obviously you and other teams coming in, all they see is expensive things have turned up, and they want a bit of money.
They can make money.
It's a shame, but yeah, I can imagine there's that risk to be run, and probably still there. I'm assuming the risk is probably still there.
In those sorts of countries, in between, it's one. We were talking about Dakar earlier. That's one of the reasons that the Dakar Rally no longer goes from Senegal, because it can be so dangerous. And there's, you know, you look back at the history, and there's been quite a few people killed. You know,
it's a shame, but it's for the better, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, look, okay, so we've talked about Rally Art. Where did we go from there? Is Tolman as a engineering company, are we finding its way there yet, or?
Yep. So when Rally Art came to a close in 2007, I was very fortunate to be one of the last few there. Personal instances at that time dictated that I thought the best way to proceed would be to start my own business. I felt like I didn't have anything to lose at that point, so at the end of 2007 we started Tolman Motorsport, with a view to do things, see how we get on. One of the first cars I ever worked on was the Mitsubishi Galant that we looked at earlier, and it just sort of grew from there. You know, the experience that we had with Rally Art, with ProDrive, with all my experience within the, you know, MOD and test and evaluation, I felt that there was an awful lot I could do, and not limited to one particular thing. The first year was, what an eclectic mix. Like I said, the Galant, I got involved with a guy in doing some Formula Renault stuff, which got into circuit racing, converted a car to run paddle shift, because again, back in 2007 it was relatively rare, but Mitsubishi were the first people to develop it, so I had a good understanding of what was needed, and we did lots of things like that. So going forward, we then got into a bit more motor racing, we did some more cars, and yeah, it's just
Well,
progressed.
yeah, because I'm assuming again this is far before the times of any sort of a Tolman editions. This is where you were finding, I guess, your feet as your own place, figuring out what the DNA of the company was, which we spoke about in the tour about being sort of excellence within originality. But of course, you guys went into racing motorsport. Sort of, was it almost considered like customer racing as such, or where did that go?
So again, it's all of my customers have been incredibly loyal. So one of the first racing guys that we had brought me a Mitsubishi Evo.
Wow.
Because obviously that was something that was very prevalent at the time, having just come from Mitsubishi. So that turned into a development program where we developed that car over the years. When we got into our Lotus Elites, that brought some other people. And then one of those guys went, "Do you know, I fancy going racing." So I went with him to look at a Ginetta G20. I didn't even know what one was at the time, but he decided to buy it. And he said, "Well, what do we do?" I said, "Well, I think we need to rebuild it." So we prepped it, rebuilt it, went to Alton Park to do the first round, and in Parc Fermé before the race, Lawrence Tomlinson comes up to me and goes, "Well, that's the best looking G20 I've ever seen. If you want to sell it, I'll buy it."
Gosh.
Which was hugely flattering.
Yeah.
So we ended up doing a few years of GT5 challenge with G20 Ginettas. Another couple of customers came in. We did reasonably well in that. We got involved with some professional drivers as driver coaches. And when they drove the car, they were like, "Oh my God, this is the best G20 we've ever driven." Like, really?
Amazing. Yeah.
So that started building the relationships, and then that's how we got into GT4 with a G55 Ginetta. And like I say, the first race we did with that, we got a pole position and a lap record that stood for nearly 7 years, I think.
And before we continue, what do you think you did to that car, without obviously giving away trade secrets, as it were, that just was better? What were you doing that was what was better?
I think it comes back to the Tolman DNA that you said. We just applied all of the small nuances from all of the professional motorsport onto that, so that the car was no different to any other car, but what it was really consistent. You know, we didn't lose suspension geometry. We looked after the dampers. All of my aircraft experience from doing preventative maintenance rather than fixing problems. So we life components. You know, you could say it was excessive, but we never had any mechanical breakdowns, and the car performed all the time.
Yeah, which I assume there's a certain cost to incur financially on creating such a solid sort of beast of a car, but I assume the results counterbalance the...
They did, yeah, and what, you know, so effectively you might have a bigger upfront cost for the preparation of the car and doing some of the things that we did, but you get that back because you don't retire from races.
Yeah.
You don't lose out on things don't break. When we prepped that car for the following season, we never ended up using it because we ended up going GT3, but another team then bought that car and ran it in 17, and they were like, "Oh my God, this is amazing," and had huge success with it. So you can see how, and it was very small things. Yeah. You know, one of the things we did was we read the rule book very carefully, right? And we because that's my job, you know. So yeah, it was good, and we did the same thing with the McLaren as well. You know, we were able. Well,
yeah, with the Ginetta, was it that you ran a certain Ginetta? Did you partner with Ginetta at all, or was that when you came into McLaren you partnered with an actual manufacturer?
No, the first time with a manufacturer was with Ginetta in 16 with the GT3 cars. Right. So we, you know, Lawrence asked us to have a look at them and run them. So we managed to put together a deal to run 2 cars. We did a lot of work to try and make them more reliable, a bit more competitive, and I think we were pretty damn successful with that. In fact, if you look at the GT4 car from Ginetta now, it's almost the same as the car from back then, but an even bigger evolution. I remember going to, I think, Brands Hatch in 2012 and seeing a GT3 Audi at the time, which was effectively what a GT4 car is now. So everything just changes and evolves,
Bigger and better, yeah.
But so Ginetta was the first sort of official factory endorsement and project we worked with.
Well, then how did that turn into McLaren then? How did the story evolve into McLaren?
So at the time, the AM driver, who was my business partner, his son worked for McLaren F1. And we'd seen the 570 testing throughout the 17 season. So we went and had it, McLaren invited us to come and test the car. They were very keen for Tolman to get involved with the car. So we ended, the AM ended up buying a car. Again, we did the same thing, which was just look at it pragmatically and from an engineering point of view and go through and improve and fix some issues that we had, which we did. And then that led us to being on the radar with McLaren and ultimately winning the contract for the Run the Driver Development Program cars for 3 years.
Which I'm assuming was the same pattern with Ginetta, where you took a McLaren and you probably maybe, I don't know, improved some records, or you must have done something statistically better than them that would have which made you popular.
Embarrassingly, I think we outperformed both reliability and performance the factory car in 17.
Yeah, so they had to have you basically.
And then we fixed problems. We found things that were inherent with the car, as you do when you develop a car, and again came up with a real pragmatic approach to it. And then McLaren ended up buying that off of me. Great. So a lot of the 2019 upgrades were things that we developed over the previous 2 seasons.
Yeah. So I mean, it sounds like you've done a lot of almost it's almost selling of your knowledge when it comes to if it's a new car or just like long time experience you've had with vehicles. It seems like a lot of people are, they're not just saying, oh, we want that car because you've improved it. They want you because then you can improve everything.
Well, it's not just me, it's the company, it's the level of talent that we employ here and the people that we've had and years of experience. If you look at the guys we've got here now, we've probably got 300 years worth of experience, I've always said that the best thing to do is employ people that are cleverer than you because it makes your job a lot easier. And the one thing I don't do is employ yes men. What I employ is people that have got backbone, that have got personality, so you can sit down and have a big discussion with.
Well, they can challenge ideas.
Exactly, and it's been the same for the last 10, 15 years here. If there's a problem, we'll sit down and everybody will chip in. A bit of a I can't remember what they call it now. Chinese Parliament, is it? Everybody sits down, has their 5 pence, and then from the bones of that, because somebody will come up with something you've never thought of.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I can imagine someone that maybe isn't in a department says something because they're so out of the scenario that hold on, that works. I can
absolutely.
Imagine, and obviously, as you say, a team like Tolman Engineering, it isn't just you in a garage. There's multiple people here, and I've spoken to some really nice, knowledgeable people here, and some young people that will hopefully continue some traditions here. They're good. But no, so it is really good. And so, I'm assuming you parted ways with McLaren at some point.
So, as with a lot of people, the pandemic hit in 2020.
So it was only recently you actually.
Yep. So 2020, that meant that we had to end that. Because the world changed. We then did a little bit of racing through 21. We ran a GT3 Bentley. But ultimately, the world had changed. We took a huge hit in terms of personnel. We had to cut down to pare people down to the bone, which is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I've never just done solely racing because it has always been eggs in one basket for me. Racing is something that is a very good way to spend a lot of money, but not a great way to make money. In fact, if anybody tells you they're making a lot of money out of racing, they're probably crooked, because racing is about selling cars and it's about spending money. The more you can spend, the more reliable, the better you'll be. So we've always had other things going, and that's how the Tolman Edition 205 started. And it's just been a natural progression that way. We still have some clients that we run some historic cars for, successfully and well. Have we finished racing? No. But I'm not busting my balls to be able to go out there and race for the sake of racing. Yeah. You've got to be very careful. A lot of people are in racing because they love it. and it is a passion, and I've got it. It's in my heart. Last year we did no racing virtually, so I actually went and mechanicked for somebody else in another team.
Just to get involved?
Just to be involved and do something different. Yeah. But if somebody came to me and, hey, Chris, I really want to go racing. You know, I've had this dream of doing Le Mans. Can I do it? Okay, yes, of course you can. You need 5 years, you need X number of million, and this is how we'll do it, and we'll do it.
Yeah, and that's even at just like the base level.
But yeah, I mean, we've learned a lot in the last 15 years about it. You know, I won't look after a race car for somebody now unless they're prepared to go on and put it on a suspension rig and do all those sorts of things, because we can just get so much information and know where we're going.
Yeah, they have to sort of subscribe to the Tolman ethos and let you do the magic, because too much tampering by outside sources can't be useful in any regard.
Well, you know, we've without really trying to be too arrogant and big-headed about it, we've sort of proved it. So whenever we've had a professional in any of our cars, it can do a lap record, it can do those sorts of things. And we've worked with quite a lot of drivers over the years, and, you know, put them in the car, it'll work. You know, the driver development program was fantastic and a really great thing, but you're working with new young drivers every year, so you never get the consistency. But when we had McLaren factory drivers in the car, fastest car. Yeah. You know, whether it's a historic car, you know, we put Rob Huff in a car when we did Goodwood for the first time, won it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What car did you take to Goodwood?
It was really proud of this one. It's a Lotus 19 recreation.
Okay, cool.
The car is actually a Tolman because it's a recreation. It's a restoration. So it's a Tolman car. Yeah. So that won in 16, first time out. Cool. I think it was, I can't remember the year now, but there was a 25th anniversary. We were invited back with the car because every car that had won, they wanted there. Cool. Yeah. And I got to drive that car around Goodwood.
Amazing. Yeah.
That had my name on it, that had won. I mean, I literally drove around with tears.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's got to feel like a bit of a pinnacle moment, or a bit of
absolutely mind-blowing.
Pinch yourself, definitely.
Completely.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, did you prove yourself as a good driver?
No, not at all.
But you were there and you enjoyed it, you know?
Pootled the thing around, you know.
Fun.
I knew it had more power than it did grip, but I didn't realise you could just light the tyres up in every gear. It didn't matter, how Rob drove it in the pouring rain. I mean, it was just phenomenal. If you see that video on YouTube, it's the epitome of the best driving in the world.
Thrashing around,
you know, he's just sideways, changing gear. It's never straight.
Proper like heritage driving, involved.
Yeah, I've worked with Rob a few times, you know, and every time he's got in one of my cars, it's been the fastest thing out there. Rob's one of the top drivers out there, he really is, and a super nice guy.
Shout out Rob.
Shout out nice one, Rob.
Okay, so we're sort of at the point where let's fast forward to the point where we're talking about the 205 Tolman edition. I think that's a good place to go. What was the foundational steps to that? Because obviously, you being an enthusiast of the 205, you must have had your own one that you'd had a tinker with, because why would you not?
Yeah, so I had a number of 205s myself. I think we said earlier, I built a race car for a guy that went on to do touring cars. Right. That was a 205.
Okay, yeah.
So and that was for Stock Hatch Championship 750 Motor Club back in the 90s. So they were, as the name suggests, standard road cars, but you try and make them as competitive as possible. So even back then, before I was doing professional motorsport, I was still preparing cars and learning, and had a bit of a feel for chassis works.
All that knowledge was just sort of...
So there's some of that. I've got my own 205 rally car that I built in a shed that when I was at Rally Art. So again, we learnt a lot from that. So there was all these things, and then all the other experience. So that was really in 2020. We started to get this car together, and it was just a marketing tool for Tolman. And then when we were in lockdown and there was nobody here, I thought, I'll play with this, and started improving it. We did one of the key things at that time, I think it might have been end of 2020 or early 21, we did a bit of a corporate day at Blyton, where we took a few customers up with their cars, hired the circuit, got a load of journalists up, to drive a Talbot Sunbeam Lotus that we done, which was kind of the first real big resto mod car. So it looked like a Talbot Sunbeam Lotus rally car with all the Group 2 bits. But then again, we did this non-invasive thing and make it better. So we had a client who had a Ferrari 458 road car and race car, and he wanted the same bit in sunbeams. So we did this thing, and then again, we put it on modern management with 8 injectors, traction, launch control, paddle shift, all of this stuff, proper dampers, and again, roll center changes, all those things. And all the journalists loved it. Everybody loves the car. And then we had one of the guys from Top Gear came and drove it, a very well-known journalist. And you could see straight away he wasn't just trying to drive it Larry and sideways. He was like, and he came and he said, that car is phenomenal. He said, it's amazing. How does it work?
Yeah.
You know.
Wow.
And then when we'd done the 205, he's gone, we need to get that car in, because if it's anything like that Sunbeam, it's going to work.
Great.
So, and that was really the start of it. So we had a phone call from Top Gear magazine. Can you have a 205 at Dunsfold for their performance car of the year?
Wow.
We're just absolutely blown away that this little 205 was there. I turned up with myself with it in the trailer, and there's Bentley and Lamborghini and BMW and Alfa, all the manufacturers. I think, what are we doing here? But I was happy that we were even invited. And lo and behold, it got through to the final 5, and it came runner-up.
Gosh.
In 21.
Yeah, and compared to, I'm assuming, the things you were stacked up against, you were pretty happy with that result.
I was blown away, absolutely. And it was them that christened this Tolman edition. It wasn't a Tolman edition, it was just something we put together, And that, like I say, that was end of 21, and then 22, Top Gear, the television program. We had a call from the production office, and again it was, can we have a couple of hot hatches? So we sent the 205 and we sent the Sunbeam. And then it turned out that it was one of their segments where the 205 was pitted against the Honda Civic with Chris and Freddie.
Great.
Freddie actually voted it his car of the year. And we launched Tolman Edition 8 o'clock Monday morning after it aired on the Sunday night. And
sort of trying to capitalise on a bit of buzz there.
And the rest, they say, is history. So that's how it started.
So you got some really nice endorsements to start you off, which probably got a lot of nice eyes onto the company and the build, as it were. So when did we first get the first? Because it must have been quite recently then. Because if you only started doing it in 2020, we're not in terms of timeline. We're quite modern. When did the first one go out? So
the first customer car, which was actually an Evo, was 2022. We started it. And finished it in 2022, and we've been developing it since. And then we delivered 3 other customer cars this year, which were obviously deposits and started in 23. And then we've got another 6 cars in build at the moment, going forward to 26.
Because obviously you said there's only 25, there should only be really 25 of these made. That book's filling up, which is nice. I bet you're happy about that.
And the only reason for that was it was just a silly number. So we've got my car, which was like the prototype, which we called Car 0, and then we did 25. So there's 2, 0, and 5. So that was the only reasoning behind it.
Kind of makes sense,
and,
right?
And now it's now they're filling up, and I'm going, So
shouldn't maybe put some more numbers? No. I think 25 is nice, isn't it? It keeps it limited, keeps it special to. I mean, have any left the country at all?
Yep.
Oh, they have. Cool. Yeah. So there's been some enthusiasm internationally then.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Right.
Globally, yeah.
That's really cool. Because I mean, the one thing that's nice is that it feels, even though it's a French car, it feels like another example of a bit of British excellence staying. It's nice to know that even now with the cars that aren't really fascinating to me, the modern cars, we've still got places like this that have enthusiasm for the game of it all. So it's just really nice to be here. To sort of take us out, let's say, in terms of the Tolman future, as it were. I think you've probably done a lot of work recently, probably in front of the camera, trying to give it more exposure, and you've obviously pressed the idea of maybe some slight merchandising. You obviously sell Tolman parts like the Mille Largo wheel separately. You don't have to.
No, exactly. So one of the things we realised very quickly with the Tolman Edition 205s was that some of the parts we had to make and manufacture. So, and whilst we sell a lot of things, there's some things that we don't sell as a mail order. So if you want an ECU conversion, the car has to come to us and we do it. There's too many variances and too much room for error to just sell it.
It's not plug and play.
It is definitely not. But things like the wheels, the brake pipes, the exhaust systems, things we know just fit, we're selling. Again, they're usually very low volume, very high quality, so the cost is expensive. The reasoning for the wheel was that there was a want from clients to have something that was a bit special and a bit more of an improvement. So again, we've made it so it's Peugeot-esque. It's got the spirit of everything, but it's a kilo lighter, it's stronger, it's a little bit wider, so you can get more performance from it. And that led on to other products, like you were saying, we've now got some merchandise so people can buy into that. We've worked with our partners on the detailing products, so we now have a range of detailing products. Which we use, endorse, and you can buy and use on your car as well.
Well, obviously the idea of the actual mechanical components is, if you have a 205 and you want, I guess, a touch of the Tolman excellence, but maybe you don't have the full price tag, you can start applying. I think the exhaust is I think a lot of people would probably be excited about the exhaust because you've probably got that down to a fine art. The car care, for instance, you don't have to own a Tolman. If you do, then it's great, right? It's like being a Porsche fan and having all their Porsche. They have everything, don't they? With a Porsche label on it. You can go ahead and get a Tolman aftercare kit for those.
I'm sure a lot of the cars will go into collections and probably never see anything.
Oh, it'd be a shame.
But equally, the first car we delivered this year is an everyday car. It's a commuter car. It's used in central London. That's the best thing. That's what they're for. Use them. And when we partnered with companies like Superguard to do all the ceramic coatings, it protects them. It gets them there, and then the aftercare with it on makes it work.
So I guess that's where we sort of find ourselves right now in terms of the story of Tolman, which is interesting to find out that there's history, but a lot of the stuff that I know it to be is quite a fresh, new thing, which is obviously, that's probably why it's hopefully exciting to you still, that it's all very much still evolving.
Hugely exciting, and it's just going like this. We've worked with some fantastic people. We've obviously got a product that people like. We've seen expressly over this year that the more marketing stuff that we've done, the people that we've met, when that comes out, it correlates directly to impressions on what we do and how we do it. The big thing that we've done this year is we've had a revamp of our website. One of the guys came up with this idea of let's do an online shop that is Tolman's Garage, because it's stuff that we sell, but we're not selling stuff to make ourselves millionaires. We're selling the stuff that we like, the stuff that we endorse, the stuff that's really good, and it's sort of quality products. So that's where the merch is, that's where the wheels are, and some of the Peugeot things. So again, with the partners and the people we work with, it's stuff that we endorse. So it's that kind of sort of holistic approach to not stack it high and sell it cheap. This is really cool stuff and really good stuff. And that's what you want.
Well, it's in line with the brand ethos, isn't it? You're not. It's nothing here is made. It's a last. It's here to be quality. It's so everything on the shop needs to follow that DNA. And just to sort of take us out, let's say, in terms of the 25. So when the 25's done, hopefully they'll be done nice and quickly. Do we have another project in mind, or are we still very much under lock and key?
Yeah, it's very much under lock and key, but there is something very, very exciting in the pipeline, which we've been working on for the last 4 years as well.
Okay.
So, watch this space.
Amazing. Well, look, thank you very much for your time, and hopefully people have learnt a bit more, and people maybe who are opening their wallets to maybe think of getting themselves a 205 might just give them a bit more.
Or anything else.
I suppose I keep thinking it's 205. You only have to look behind us. Let's be honest, there's so much scope here.
I mean, this year we've done a load of Group B rally cars,
right.
Because again, with our experience and our knowledge here, they're very special cars, but they are cars. A lot of people are very scared of them, but we can reverse engineer, source, find, and get parts. So, we did the thing with the RS200. That's on a modern ECU, so you can get in and start it every day.
That's a prime example of what the
exactly.
Work you guys do.
But it's now a fully usable car. Yeah. It's not a pristine garage queen that you're terrified to take out because you can't get any bits for it. Yeah. It now works, and that's exactly what we do.
And I bet the people who work for you and work in the team are very happy to see a bit of variation.
Look, it's like Christmas here when you get cars like that turn up, because we're all enthusiasts. Yeah. We all love it, and it's a privilege and a pleasure to work on cars like that. Yeah. Let alone, we can make a living out of it.
Yeah. Well, look, it's been a privilege and a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.